Hi, Dennis Weiss, Eagle Communications with Why Like Ike and the Interstate Highway System. And if you didn't know that Dwight David Eisenhower was in charge of developing the idea for the Interstate Highway, you will when we're done. Pam Sanfilippo, Tim Reeves, the experts, Interstate Highway. What was the real name, Pam? It wasn't.
Well, when it was renamed in honor of Eisenhower, it became, and I should have this right in front of the Dwight D. Eisenhower National Interstate Highway and Defense System.
Defense.
You can see Eisenhower's always in that context of the Cold War.
Yeah.
And that was a way to evacuate the cities in case of an attack.
I was having this discussion with my son a while back. He was watching a documentary, and his mom walked in and said, "Can't we all just get along?" You know, and Judah said, "No. You know, he had to bomb those railways in Germany, right?
In France too.
And that's to take out the resupply in the war in Europe." I often have thought this, and so I'm asking it as a question today. You know, when the railroads were taken out in Europe, the ability to resupply was gone from the German army. They were a single source because they had nothing like an interstate highway system that could move heavy material and men quickly across Europe. We've been blessed with such a trail, and the word defense made me think about that. I guess I will never know, but unless you tell me. Well, how much of that was defense and how much of it was a highway system?
Well, that's, you know, in previous episodes we talked about Eisenhower and balance, which just comes up again and again, and they were always looking for cost-effective ways to do more than one thing at a time. And so there was what they, you know, during the heightened tension of that time, that you did need ways to quickly evacuate cities, but also the number of cars had grown so much in the last 20 years, especially once all that pent-up demand from World War II was set free, that the roads were simply too congested. And it was an idea that had been around. There'd been attempts in Congress since the 30s to build a national highway or interstate system, and some states had them, and they thought of just trying to connect those. But no one had ever been able to pass the big bill. And Eisenhower, in his good conciliatory, fashion, was able to come to an agreement, and it was finally passed in 1956. That was the real birth of the interstate highway system. And it's interesting. It's probably maybe our most constant contact with that aspect of something that's been done by the federal government. The U.S. Mail is probably number one, but I mean, how many of us actually use the interstate highway system? It was also the largest public work project in history, which is on Eisenhower's scale, given the fact that he commanded 2 of the 3 largest amphibious invasions in history. And again, there's that Eisenhower planning of having that vision for these massive undertakings, whether it's an invasion or something like the interstate highway system.
I'm looking at a line on the sign that's next to Pam, and it says the Federal Highway Trust Fund, the pay-as-you-go mechanism through which we're able to have this. That's a line where you're trying to sell to a group of people on both sides of yes or no. Pay as you go. That's a mechanism where we don't have to pay for it today. We're not going to put it on anyone. We're all going to pay for it as we use it. That's a consensus building statement. Again, it was the genius of Eisenhower and whoever wrote that for him.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to give you a little segue, Tim, to say kind of what the idea behind it for Eisenhower, what his experience had been, why he felt the interstate was so important.
We were just chatting about this, and it really begins with his disappointment at not going to Europe during World War I. Eisenhower, even very early in his career, was recognized as a great organizer and manager, and eventually ran the tank training center at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where he trained thousands of men, also handled a flu epidemic, and succeeded as he usually did in that assignment, but he was bitterly disappointed. I think he had orders to sell to France like in November 18. Basically for the last day of the war, and those got canceled, of course. And he didn't know, he thought it would ruin his career. And as he told one of his friends, from now on, I'm not going to cut a wide swath and just show them what they missed. And so shortly after that time, he found out about this 1919 transcontinental motor convoy. And it was really almost a shakedown cruise for the Army's new, mechanized vehicle force. And so they left Washington in, I believe it was July 7th, 1919, and 62 days later arrived in San Francisco. There was not a national network of roads. In some places, the roads simply disappeared, and they had to make their own way across the land. And so he knew very early on that we needed a better national network of roads. And then in Germany, he did see that Autobahn system, which was made for vehicular traffic. And so that kind of reinvigorated that idea in his mind. And so it was one of those things that he thought that we needed and had developed in his mind for many years, and then finally there was the opportunity to do it. I think another interesting point is he wasn't just looking for a large public works in order to stimulate the economy or employ more people, which it did, but there was this genuine need for more roads and bigger roads, which would increase everything from just the ease of driving from one location to another to the shipment of goods across the country.
Yeah.
And a lot of it had to do with traffic safety as well. You mentioned there were so many more cars on the road after the war that there were lots of accidents. And so he had a conference on White House Conference on Traffic Safety in 1954 that kind of initiated some of this and looked at some ideas for how best to accomplish.
I love making these shows with you because, first of all, it's Dwight David Eisenhower, and I always learn something. But second of all, you let me ask questions that we don't have a script for. So, I'm sitting here thinking of these points you bring up, and we talk about balance, and we talk about building consensus as being part of his genius. And I'm listening to those points, and I'm going, that's to appeal to this group. That point is to appeal to a certain group of people or a certain amount of authority that he needed to get this massive project started and off the ground, and commitment to. People come from different angles. I'm sure that the military thought it was a great idea to have wide roads across the country where they could rapidly defend the homeland. I'm sure that was easy for them to say yes. Might have been hard for some other groups to say yes to this.
Well,
idea.
Railroad interest, for one, but of course, car manufacturers liked it. Construction interest, of course, would like it. But you're right, there's all those different constituencies that have to buy in. And also, it's worth pointing out that in 1956, when the bill was passed, he had an opposition Congress, as he often did.
Right.
So he had to work across the aisle to make things like this happen.
If you haven't seen the movie Cars, you don't have children in your home. But the Route 66 phenomena, where these little two-lane highways that were spider webs all over America were largely replaced by the 4 lanes that went straight across America. For every benefit, there's a backflush of negativity that can be perceived from it, and there certainly was from the interstate highway system. Communities were isolated, but I'll tell you this, in my world, I just refuse to accept that. I think, yes, they were physically isolated, but they had choices, and they had opportunities for change, to profit from them, and one choice brings another. I don't think anything was from the interstate highway system was the end all, the world ends for you, Santa Rosa, New Mexico today. No, it doesn't. It's a choice, how you adapt to anything. But I step back and look at as seemingly all Eisenhower decisions that we look at today from 2016, they all seem huge to me. Now, I can't think of a little thing Eisenhower did. They're all very big things. Yes, I know he was the president of the United States, but these are things that affect generations of America, and they did so in a positive way.
It's a good point, and as he told John F. Kennedy during the transition, he said there are no little problems on your desk. Everything that arrives on your desk is big.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there's downside to everything. Well, one, critics would say the whole growth of suburbia is due to the interstate, so people moving out of the cities and getting further and further out. And also you could see what it did here in Abilene. The city was centered downtown because it was centered around the railroad depot.
Right.
And now that we have the interstate 2 miles north of downtown, everything's gravitating towards the interstate. So those roads of both the communication lanes and transportation lanes really do affect where businesses go and people live. So again, there are two sides to all these issues.
Now, here we are in 2016, and because there's an Eagle Communications guy on camera, boy, what a wonderful segue. Thank you so much. So here we are.
We're here to serve.
Yes, thank you. We're here. Why like Ike? It's too much genius to be a coincidence. You look at what you just said, the paradigm where businesses started moving towards the interstate, happened all over America.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Moved towards the interstate. Yet here we are today. I was in a meeting this week about how we revitalize, how we still take advantage of that interstate connection to the world, yet make our downtown more vibrant than it has been since Eisenhower stood on it.
We need a really long ramp connecting us to the interstate from downtown.
We have the internet. We have the ability to take this program and present it to people all over the world about the gem that sits in downtown Abilene called the Eisenhower Presidential Library, Museum, and Boyhood Home, and all the rest. And we can pull people off of that interstate.
That's what
we can
do.
pull
Exactly.
people from Berlin to Abilene.
And there are, every day when you go to the parking lot here at the library and museum, you see license plates from all over the country. So having that interstate system makes this a great place. Yes, it's a couple miles off the road, but that's without that interstate.
I've tried for years to find a way to turn this insane idea into reality, but I need the table from D-Day, and I can't get anybody to let me use it. It's all under glass, you see, and it's a historical artifact. But my point is this: if Dwight David Eisenhower were chairing a meeting about how we revitalize downtown Abilene, I think it would be not such a problem to him. Because when you think of things in the full scope of thought, it's just a mile and a half that way.
Yeah.
How can that be a problem? It's nothing but an advantage. That interstate's up there. Even if it were 20 miles away, it's still an advantage to us. And we're sitting in a place that draws 185 to 200,000 people a year into our community for a little while. The key for us is to present things here that make them want to stay a long while. We filmed 3 programs today. This is our 3rd program, so we've been here an hour and a half or so. Yeah, and 25-minute programs, and we only scratch the surface of any topic we talk about. This interstate highway system, we could sit here and rotate people through the seats as we fall over and have people who could provide information about what is here in this library, in this museum, that's available to the world to come see. That film, as we go out and Samantha puts the digital marketing to make it go, click on it and watch it, we have unparalleled opportunity to use this interstate highway system to get people to come here to Dwight David Eisenhower's hometown.
And back in 1959, there was a young girl in Wichita, Kansas, who wrote to President Eisenhower. That is part of our collections today. And she says, "Dear Mr. President, I am Phyllis Ann Barnes, and I am in the 4th grade at Jesse Hunter Black School. I've heard a lot of people complain about our country and government. So I am writing this to tell you how much I love my country. I like the beautiful mountains, streams, parks, lakes of Minnesota, big trees in Yosemite, Grand Canyon, Indians of New Mexico and Arizona, the wide open prairies of my own home state of Kansas." She says, "I also like the smooth, wide highways that our taxes helped pay for. And it is because of this we pay taxes. So at our house, we do not mind paying taxes." I love this letter.
That is a great letter.
And she used those highways to go with her family to visit those national parks and
It's a very
places.
well-written letter for a 4th grader.
Yeah.
We made the point that we all shook our head with because we're Eisenhower people, I guess. But Eisenhower did big things. He did them very well. I think when people complain about government, they're often complaining about the little things that government maybe is not doing so well. But we're not responsible for anybody else's governmental problems. We're here to talk about Dwight David Eisenhower. And you look at the interstate highway system, and there was a need. There was a public need. There was a public defense need. There was an opportunity to build a funding mechanism to change the forever future of America. And once again, Dwight David Eisenhower sat in the middle of that meeting and orchestrated that talent. Those people came to a decision, and here we are.
And moved it forward after it had lingered for 20 years in the legislature.
Yeah, unique fellow. Okay, what have we got for, other than the signs, which people are getting to see, which are pretty cool, 495 out of Virginia. I've hauled a horse or two around there. So what have you got in front of you, Pam?
Well, some of the images, this is the President's Advisory Committee on a National Highway Program. It was dubbed the Clay Committee after its head, General Lucius Clay, someone that I knew very well. So
I think we got a shot of
that. I think so, yeah.
And behind us, we don't know where the big dig is here, but he's evidently crossing a mountain. And you and I made a comment about Highway 99 that runs south, and they just paved the cow path. Well, most of the East Coast, they just paved the cow path too. The interstate highway system was really about changing not only where the road went, but how the road got there. And it's flattened the high spots and filled in the low spots and enabled the rapid transit of heavy vehicles. 150,000 pounds on the road today.
The construction picture reminds me there are 3 locales that claim to be the first interstate, and one is in Kansas, just east of it, and it was the first constructed.
Okay.
Missouri claims first because they had the first funds authorized.
Right.
And then there's I believe a Pikeway in Pennsylvania that then became part of the interstate system, and so they claim first. So you have all these different communities claiming that they were the first to have a stretch of the interstate highway.
So as we look off to your right, we have Mr. Eisenhower and Mr. Khrushchev up there, and this project was started during those years of that conflict of the Cold War that wasn't so cold from time to time.
That's right.
And so the defense portion of that, when you look at the picture of Mr. Eisenhower as President Eisenhower, that never left his mind. You had a pretty interesting story about Khrushchev and how relevant it is to Abilene today that you told us before the camera comes on. I don't know whether you want to retell it or not, but President Eisenhower faced the reality that Khrushchev planned on and confidently expressed his ability to wipe America off the face of the earth.
He did, and he made it very personal, told Eisenhower that he would basically annihilate his grandchildren in the process. And so that says a lot about Khrushchev's character.
You think about motivation. I'm as confident as well that the emotion that Dwight David Eisenhower felt about protecting his grandchildren, when that expressed to him bordered on rage, it could not but help do that. But this man also stood in front of the troops before D-Day, and I'm confident as he was a professional soldier, those soldiers, young men who were going to land on Omaha Beach, were as important to him, the protection of their lives, as his children and grandchildren were. He saw us all the same. We're Americans.
Well, and he always said his job as president was to prevent World War III or to win it. But as he often said, the only way to win World War III is to prevent it.
Yeah. Well, brilliantly said. We always run out of time before we run out of things to say. But you would have never thought a simple conversation about an interstate highway system could take you where we went today. So thank you so much, Pam. Tim, you're always a delight to represent Dwight David Eisenhower. And we're so happy here at Eagle to come film Why Like Ike, put it on TV, put it on the internet for everybody all over the world to enjoy. Pam Sanfilippo, Tim Reeves in the middle. I'm Dennis Weiss. I work for Eagle Communications. You have a great day.